The African Union Assembly has declared 2018 as the year of anti-corruption. It intends to discourage this vice, which is threatening to cripple economic development across the continent. The United Nations Development Programme has identified a new trend of corruption involving the private sector. CGTN's Coletta Wanjohi spoke to Njoya Tikum, the UNDP's Africa Regional Advisor on Anti-Corruption in Addis Ababa.
What we have seen is that the problem of corruption in Africa is bigger than what we thought. Because in the past, we thought it's just about government ministers stealing money or government public officials abusing authority vested in them. We have now realized that the private sector, perhaps it's even the worst player of corruption on the continent of Africa, that the amount of money that departs the continent annually far surpasses the amount of foreign aid that Africa receives a year. Mbeki in 2013 said 50 billion, and this is a very conservative figure. He said 50 billion US dollars depart or leave the continent illicitly through illegal economic and trade transactions to offshore accounts.
But who is talking about the corruption that is within our society, among individuals?
It is the worst kind of corruption, I would say, because it is corruption that affects the most vulnerable of all. It is corruption that affects the people our society should be protecting. They are the most vulnerable to that kind of corruption. They are the ones who die every day in hospitals because they don't have money to bribe the doctor. They are the ones who are unable to send their children, so they constantly remain poor because their education, the family educational standard doesn't change. They are the ones who are unable to open a small business because they don't have money to bribe the tax inspector. They are the ones who cannot even, despite the opportunities, the farming opportunities in their communities, cannot carry their goods from one part of the village to another part because the police officers along the road would ask them bribe. By the time they get to the market with their goods, the amount of money they would have paid far surpasses the interest they would make on their goods. They are the most affected people by corruption in our communities. And that's why the continent still have the highest amount of poor people. Africa still play host to the highest amount of poor people around the world.
Over time, are we seeing any progress or any new approach by our government, especially in combating corruption, or are we still approaching it in the old ways?
The focus has changed. The interest in the fight against corruption has changed. There was a time when you could never discuss corruption with some of our governments because they didn't even believe that they were corrupt, or they didn't want to be told that, you have a problem of corruption. People are pillaging money under your nose. But today, I don't think there's any government across the continent that would shun away from discussing the issue of corruption within their national or their sovereign border. So people speak about corruption now very openly. That's a good thing. The solutions, though, I think is where we still have some issues.